Hello, my friends. Today we're going to be talking about a very interesting sample. We're going to be talking about Krasnoyarsk Bronze Age, kra001. This sample is male and it is from Krasnoyarsk Krai, from this region in Krasnoyarsk Krai right here. What is interesting about this sample is it is the earliest and the only Proto-Uralic sample that exists. So this sample is the only hypothetical Proto-Uralic sample that is ancestral to all of the later Uralic groups that populated Eurasia, such as Levan Luchta right here, such as the Большой Olenyi Ostrov right here in the Kola Peninsula, such as the various Mansi and Khanty groups, various Uralic people that exist and live in the Eurasia descend from this individual. And we're going to look and we're going to examine his result with my trait predictor in this video. When it comes to his mitochondrial lineage is C4b, and when it comes to his Y DNA is actually N1A1. The Y DNA that my trait predictor determines for him is also N1A1. This is the lineage that is most common and most typical for Finland, for um, various regions where Finnish and Finno-Ugric languages are spoken. This lineage came into Northeast Europe together with Uralic languages. Of course, it's spread together with Uralic Finno-Ugric languages. These people in Finland who speak Finnish language, they have a lot of this Y-DNA from this Siberian individual, like this person, like this Krasnoyarsk kra001, but they don't have much of the autosomal DNA from him. So they have a lot of the Y-DNA from people like him, but they don't have a lot of the autosomal lineage from him. And that's why, for example, despite having this very exotic non-European haplogroup, that descends from Siberia and is closely linked to the haplogroup that was carried by this very, very exotic, very East Eurasian individual. Finnish people are actually blonde, blue-eyed, and autosomally, if you look at the contents of their autosomal DNA, they are very, very, very European, very extremely European. In fact, more European than the rest of Europeans are. Anyway, the rant is over. We're going to go and actually examine the trade predictor results of kra001 now. We are going to start with the ethnic calculator results. So let's start with this. And here he is closest to Tibetan Iron Age, followed by Mongol, followed by Mongol, followed by Jamon, followed by Korean, followed by Yakutian Neolithic, followed by Mongol once again, followed by Chinese and Korean. So he's closest to various East Eurasians, very typical stuff. Let's close that and see what he scores with Eurogenes K13. Here he is actually getting more as a mixture of Yevens plus Yevens. He's closest to Yevens, which I think are North Siberians. So he's definitely very Siberian. He's scoring 86.3% Siberian, 6% East Asian, 4% Amerindian, and 2% Baltic, which is kind of surprising. So he's actually scoring a little bit of European admixture as well. He's got 2% Baltic with Eurogenes K13. Is there anything that's unusual in this result? Not really. I don't see anything unusual in this result at all. There is 2%, 0.2% sub-Saharan African and 0.2% Northeast African, but that is not unusual. I think that falls within the range of trace ancestry or like noise, so that doesn't surprise me whatsoever. 2% Baltic is a little bit unusual, but I guess I can expect that. Maybe that's a little bit of a remnant from EHG or some kind of European hunter-gatherer admixture that made its way to Siberia, where this individual is from. Okay, now let's see what he scores for the Nasha code calculator results. This might be definitely very interesting to see. And here he is scoring definitely very, very dark for the eye color. 96.2% darkest brown eyes, very, very black eye color. This is where we see the big disconnect between this type of phenotype and like modern Finnish people. Modern Finnish people and Finno-Ugrics in general are very light, blonde, blue-eyed, light-featured folks. And this Krasnoyarsk kra001, he has 96.2% likelihood of black eye color and 3.6% likelihood of brown eyes then, and 0% of anything lighter than hazel. So definitely very dark eye color. For hair color, his likelihood of black hair is 99.9% likelihood of black hair, Definitely black hair once again. Very, very dark person in terms of pigmentation of eyes and hair. For skin color, looks like he's got light brown skin, 73.8% likelihood of light brown skin, and then 26% likelihood of olive or Mediterranean skin tone. So he's got a predisposition to light brown or olive or Mediterranean skin tone. More likely light brown than olive. Actually, 3 times more likely light brown than olive. And for pale or white, absolutely no likelihood for that. So he's quite dark in terms of skin tone as well. For hair texture, most likely he's got straight hair. 51% likelihood of straight hair. There is almost no likelihood of kinky hair for him, but most likely he's got straight hair. For nose shape, this is actually very decisive. For nose shape, he definitely has snub shaped nose. 97.334% likelihood of snub shaped nose. This is something I very recently added to the trait predictor version of to the trait predictor version. It's gonna be it's still something that's kind of like a work in progress. So you're gonna see this on May 22nd. Currently, this is not on the each page version of trait predictor, but you will see this there on May 22nd. So keep 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 on the lookout. So he definitely has snub-shaped nose as well. Very, very weird, very different from what's typical for Finnish people. Once again, Finnish people typically don't have noses like this, but for him, he's got snub-shaped nose. He looks very different, as you can see from the typical appearance for Finnish people. And for blue eye haplotypes, no BEH3, no BEH2. He does have blue eye haplotype 1, which is kind of typical for East Asians as well. East Asians, it's not very unusual for them to have blue eye haplotype 1, and he does not have any of the light hair variants in MC1R. Okay, no predisposition to being ginger. Let's see the phenotype oracle, and here we see once again a very big disconnect between him and what's typical for Finnish people. He looks nothing like Finnish people. Have you ever seen a Finnish person that looks like this? I have not seen a Finnish person that looks anything like this. I've never seen a Finnish person that looks anything remotely like this at all. So obviously, he does not look Finnish, not in the slightest, not in the slightest Finnish. So there you go, not a Finnish-looking guy. And yet he is very ancestral to Finnish people, and something like 60% of Finnish people carry his paternal lineage. Let's go ahead and see what he scores for the biomarkers panel. Let's look at that. Looks like he's got a predisposition to higher than average levels of vitamin D. Looks like he got a predisposition to higher than average levels of LDL cholesterol, a lower than average levels of HDL cholesterol. That is bad. So higher LDL and lower HDL. That is bad. Predisposition to lower than average levels of glucose, a predisposition to higher than average level of hemoglobin. That's bad. Higher than average blood pressure. That's also bad. That actually falls into the elevated blood pressure panel, elevated blood pressure level. Below average level of iron in blood. That's okay. Below average level of sex hormone binding globulin. Average level of red blood cell count. Below average telomere length, and much lower height. So this person is predisposed to being much lower average height. This person is actually very much shorter than average, almost 2 centimeters lower than average for height. That's kind of crazy. So this person has a predisposition to being much shorter than average. That's actually a little bit of an extreme result. So not sure what to make of it. So this person's got a predisposition to being much shorter than the average. So if the average white male is 178 centimeters, then for this person this would be 176 centimeter prediction, which is kind of short actually. Not that short, not like horrible short, but still kind of short. Okay, let's see for the apologenic risk scores what this person is scoring. He's got a slightly below average odds for lupus, slightly below average odds for gout, low odds for thyroid cancer, very low odds for eczema, very low odds for exfoliation glaucoma, average odds for pigmentary glaucoma, below average odds for open angle glaucoma, average odds for primary congenital glaucoma, average odds for polycystic ovary syndrome, average odds for cataracts, average odds for age-related macular degeneration, average odds for rheumatoid arthritis, average odds for Tourette's, Very high odds for epilepsy. Very interesting. So for epilepsy, he's got high odds for epilepsy. He's got average odds for asthma. He's got average odds for leukemia. He's got slightly above average odds for vitiligo. He's got slightly above average odds for myopia. Average odds for primary biliary cirrhosis. Average odds for stroke. Very low odds for male pattern hair loss. So yeah, he's definitely protected from male pattern hair loss, but it makes sense that the number is so low because he's East Asian in terms of his ancestry, and East Asians tend to be protected from male pattern hair loss. So that makes sense. He's got very high odds for atrial fibrillation. He's got below average odds for deep vein thrombosis, slightly above average odds for bipolar type 1, slightly above average odds for schizophrenia, below average odds for type 2 diabetes, average odds for type 1 diabetes, below average odds for Alzheimer's, very low odds for multiple sclerosis. 2 risk variants for breast cancer of 24, pretty typical stuff. 11 risk variants for testicular cancer of 24. Looks like he's got 2 risk variants and all the important variations on keto G, so he's cooked for testicular cancer. 2 risk variants for celiac disease out of 12, pretty typical stuff. No risk variants for GSS, 8 risk variants for Crohn's out of 28. I could go ahead and explore what these variations are and where these risk variants are, but I'm not going to do that. But like if you're exploring your own data file and you have these risk variants that showing up here, you should totally like go and actually look them up. But I'm not going to do that right now. I don't have the time for it. No risk variants for Parkinson's, 2 risk variants for Gilbert syndrome. Once again, I'm not going to look them up. 1 risk variant for GCD out of 4 total. This is common, and no risk variants for Waardenburg syndrome. All right, so the only thing we really have to watch out for, I think, is epilepsy. Epilepsy, and I think something else was. What was another thing? Atrial fibrillation. So let's look up atrial fibrillation. I think we should be able to find something in the file right now. Let's look it up. So he's got 2 genotypes, one of them for decreased risk of atrial fibrillation, another one for increased risk of atrial fibrillation. But it looks like there's something else that's contributing to the score that's not showing up on the screen. Okay. Let's see for the monogenic traits. Looks like he's got a predisposition to intermediate phenotype, intermediate between warrior and warrior. So it looks like he's got intermediate dopamine levels and ability to tolerate stress. So he's not necessarily warrior or warrior, although he's got more of a predisposition to being a warrior for sure. Like 31% versus 15%. He's more of a warrior than a warrior. For D2 dopamine receptors, he's got once again intermediate number of dopamine D2 receptor sites. Although there is a little bit more predisposition to higher number rather than low. Once again, 34 versus 23%. So there is slight predisposition to higher number of D2 dopamine receptor sites. When it comes to 5-HTTLPR, looks like he's got short form 5-HTTLPR and slightly higher risk of depression. Pretty typical stuff. He doesn't have any risk variants for dwarfism. Okay. Doesn't have any risk variants for dwarfism. And looks like he has predisposition to actually lower or intermediate odds of autism. Very, very interesting. So, predisposition to lower or intermediate odds of autism, intermediate number of D2 dopamine receptor sites, and intermediate between warrior and warrior genotype, phenotype based on his genotypes in COMT, MAOA, MAOB. Is there any MAOA and MAOB here? Actually, no, it's only COMT. There is no MAOA and MAOB here. So it looks like there is just not enough data in this file, unfortunately. Okay, when it comes to empathy, he has a predisposition to lower or average level of empathy. So that's kind of typical for people of East Asian descent to have slightly lower level of empathy, at least based on genotype and OXTR. That's kind of the way the allele distribution in that gene plays out. It's that East Asians tend to have more of the alleles that have to do with lower empathy. He does not have any of the alleles for European lactose persistence mutation, which is not so surprising whatsoever. Okay. For hemochromatosis, no risk variants for hemochromatosis. For Alzheimer's, no risk variants for Alzheimer's and APOE, which is really good to see. Okay. For cardiovascular disease panel, looks like he's got a predisposition to intermediate odds of cardiovascular issues. Looks like he's got a lot of intermediate odds for all of these stuff. He doesn't really have any predispositions to lower or higher. Most of this stuff is intermediate for him. Okay, for asthma and epilepsy panel, this might be very interesting because he was scoring very high for epilepsy. So he's got a genotype for higher odds of epilepsy, increased odds of epilepsy, higher than average odds of epilepsy, and 3 times. Yeah, okay. So for epilepsy, he's got a lot of genotypes that increase the odds of that. Um, okay. For vitiligo panel, he's got one allele in the HLA gene which corresponds to increase the risk of vitiligo. For facial morphology panel, this might be very interesting to see. Let's see, does he have any European EDAR alleles? No, he does not. I'm looking for, my trait predictor looks for currently three SNPs in the EDAR gene. And in all three SNPs, he's got a stereotypically East Asian genotype. So he's got stereotypically East Asian genotype in all three of the EDAR SNPs that my trait predictor looks for. So, very stereotypically East Asian genotype. Longer mid-face length, decreased odds of protruding nasal bridge, more upturned nose, larger nose size, higher nasolabial angle, which means nose pointing up, lower odds of tooth agenesis or missing teeth, slightly thinner eyebrows. Two genotypes for slightly thinner eyebrows. He does not have micropenis. He's got mix of muscle types, likely more sprinter rather than endurance athlete. He's got one fat gene variant and FTOs RS939-609, higher odds of obesity and sleep apnea. Okay. He's not an Asian flusher, actually, and he's got lower odds of alcoholism and normal risk of esophageal cancer. Not an Asian flusher is a little bit surprising because, typically, East Asians tend to be Asian flushers. Okay. For cannabis-induced psychosis, he's got slightly increased odds of cannabis-induced psychosis. He doesn't have any risk variance for pain hypersensitivity out of 6 total variants in SCN98, so he doesn't have any predisposition to pain hypersensitivity. For alcoholism, he's got much greater risk for alcoholism than average, which is kind of expected. That was the word I was looking for. It was kind of expected for somebody of East Asian descent. For familiar Mediterranean fever, he actually has a 1 risk variant for familiar Mediterranean fever in this variation. So that's kind of surprising because familiar Mediterranean fever is like a very Mediterranean kind of disease. So you don't expect to see risk variants for that in a proto-Uralic individual from Siberia. But nonetheless, he has 1 risk variant for familiar Mediterranean fever in this variation. Very interesting. For albinism in a typical traits panel, he does not carry any risk variants for albinism or cleft lip or Melanesian blonde hair. For cancers, he has 2 risk variants for breast cancer in these 2 variations. Okay. For rare diseases and traits panel, we remember he was scoring high for exfoliation glaucoma. Actually, no, he was scoring really low for that. Let's scroll back. Hold on. Exfoliation glaucoma. Yeah, he was scoring really low for that. So let's look it up again. Yeah, so he's scoring really low because of this genotype. So yeah, really low score for exfoliation glaucoma. Lower odds of neural tube defects, really good stuff. Does he have any predisposition to any of the rare diseases that I look for? He has a predisposition to ankylosing spondylitis. I don't really see any conditions that he's predisposed to. No, I don't see anything. Okay. He's not predisposed to. He doesn't really have any protective variants from HIV. He's not predisposed to Canavan syndrome. He's not predisposed to Crohn's disease. Okay. For HLA panel, looks like he's predisposed to lower odds of autoimmune disease, which is definitely really good to see. For thyroid cancer panel, well, let's see, what does he score for thyroid cancer again? I think it was below average. Yeah, he's scoring way below average for thyroid cancer. So for thyroid cancer, he's scoring way below average, which is good. And for muscular dystrophy myopathies, looks like he doesn't have any risk variants for that. Really good to see. For color blindness panel, no risk variants for color blindness in any of the genes. No risk variants were found in OPN1 LW or OPN1 MW or OPN1 SW, so that's really good. For FTO gene panel, looks like he has 1 risk allele for obesity in this variation. Heterozygous here. Heterozygous here as well. Looks like he's heterozygous for all of them actually. So he's heterozygous for obesity-related variants and all the FTO genes. So he's got some predisposition to obesity in the FTO, but you know, that's kind of typical, and that's kind of like the same as me. I also have heterozygous genotype, so there is some predisposition to obesity. For syncope panel, based on 6 SNPs, he's got way below average odds of syncope, 0.00083, so slightly below average odds of syncope. For biotraits panel, looks like, let's see, dry earwax, no body odor, likely Asian ancestry. So he's got this genotype, this East Asian genotype that predisposes him to having dry earwax and less smellier body odor. Very East Asian genotype, and also one copy of the hunter-gatherer and one copy of the farmer CLTCL1 gene variant, which leads to intermediate ability to process carbs and sugars. He's got this genotype, which leads to two times increased risk of severe alcohol withdrawal and possible increased odds of ADHD. Okay. Cataracts. Let's see, what was he scoring for cataracts? Cataracts. Cataracts. Above average for cataracts. So, yeah. Looks like he's got some genotypes for increased odds of cataracts. For vitamins and levels panel, looks like he's got a genotype that decreases the levels of B6. He's got a genotype that increases the levels of B12 and also lowers the levels of B12. And for blood group panel, his blood type is actually type O, the most common blood type, the most prevalent typical blood type for humans. Well, that was pretty much all I wanted to talk about here. That's all I wanted to discuss in this video. Thanks for watching until the very end of the video. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. I sure hope that this was entertaining for you to watch. And also, I do want you to go and buy my tool on Itch, the tool that I used to generate this content for you, to generate these reports. You can use this for any microarray sequence file, 23andMe format, Ancestry format, MyHeritage format, any format, any raw DNA format you want. You can generate a report like this. It is on my Itch page, and it only costs $13 now, but it's going to cost more after May 22nd, after I release all these updates. So, thanks for watching. You can download. Actually, the link to download this file will not be in the description because I have previously made a video on this sample. So you should look through my channel and find that video, and the link will be on that video. But the link to my software will be in the description of the video. So thanks for watching. Leave a like and subscribe. Goodbye.